Zoom webinar. So for those that don't know me, I'm Martin Shaw from D3 Office Group, and I'd like to welcome you to Crack On, a 1 hour business booster organised by For Entrepreneurs Only Growth Group in conjunction with David Hall. Thank you to Jan Brumby and Kerry Mountain Hewitt, who are providing support in the background. And you'll also notice our other panelists. We're just waiting for one panelist to join us who's having a few problems with his internet at the minute. So you'll hear from 5 very different businesses this morning as they describe what they've done to overcome the challenges of COVID-19, how they've done it, what they've learned along the way. And David Hall will put some structure to our session, probing the panelists and offering insights and ideas that you can use in your business. David should need no introduction to most of you. He was instrumental in starting FEO over 10 years ago. His books have been well read by FEO members, and his latest book, Telling Tales, was released last month. So after each 5-minute story, there will be a chance to post questions to the panel. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. But if we don't find time to do all of them, we will follow it up afterwards. So without further ado, I'll introduce our first panelist this morning. So Ian White from White's Travel. So Ian worked in the corporate travel business for a long time, heading up one of the UK's largest corporate travel companies, before branching out 4 years ago with his wife Mel and launching Squash Travel for Squash Pros and White's Travel from Airlucky Garden Centre. So over to you, Ian, to talk about your story during the COVID crisis.
Thank you, Martin, and good morning, everybody. As Martin said, I own 2 travel companies for my sins in the current climate, White's and Squash Travel. And prior to that, I was CEO of Corporate Travel International, who had 6 UK hubs, 120 million turnover, but very importantly to me, was founded and headquartered in Hull. So I've been in the industry 37 years, of which 37 and a half were pretty amazing, but we still have major challenges through the likes of 9/11 and the ash cloud. It was lessons learned during these difficult times that stood me in good stead to, say, crack on and get through these unprecedented times. It may be of interest just to quickly speak on how our industry works. It's not people really understand how travel companies make their money. It used to be completely commissionable, so we received a commission between 7.5% and 9% on the sale of any air ticket. Then one morning, about 10 years ago, we walked in and there was well, probably 15 years ago now, because it was a fax. We received a fax from Delta Airlines to saying, sorry, with immediate effect, 0 commission. So we completely had to change the way that we charge for our services, which is important to one of the changes we made during these times, which I'll come on to very shortly. On the holiday side, it's still a straight commissionable basis where we earn a commission on the retail price of the holiday. So what's happening in our industry? Well, we've actually returned all our earnings on every holiday booked due to depart between March and September of this year, and the vast majority for the rest of the year. And at the same time, we've actually derived almost 0 revenue from either of our 2 businesses. You hear a lot about the hospitality business, which obviously are having a terrible time, but Wetherspoons may not have sold much beer in lockdown, but they haven't refunded the cost of the beer that they sold in the previous 6 months. We have, and it's something that we have to address going forward. It's a really, really tough gig. So what advice can I share to highlight the steps we've taken? By far the most important is try not to cut too far to help and work your business and advise your clients. In our business, we've not used one due to COVID email response or on the answer phone. Every call has been taken, every email actioned, and it's been as tough as hell, both financially and mentally. At the end of the day, we're salespeople. We've spent 7 months of our lives just administering refunds, changes, cancellations. But the important message is we've been there when a lot of our competition, especially in the online world, have simply put up the shutters. And going back to 9/11 and the ash cloud, which is by nowhere near as serious as this, but the lessons learnt were our best ever client gain and client retention happened after these events. And I'll almost guarantee the same will happen again. If you're sticking with it now, when it comes back and you're well placed to take on the business, things will be fine. Second piece of advice is to really look and understand where you derive your earnings from. It's a very, very fragile world we live in, and certainly in our industry. You simply can't spend weeks putting a big trip together, then something happens, then weeks and weeks unraveling it all, refunding the client, dealing with the operators for absolutely nothing. There's no fee involved whatsoever. And that certainly has to change. So we've got to make it clear to the buyer, how we charge for our service in addition to charging from the product that we make.
Can you give us one more, Ian, because your 5 minutes is nearly up?
Okay, well, the very, very quick thing, and it's very, very, very important to me, is that I've been a very, very stressful job, and for most of that, I stopped playing sport, and it nearly killed me. My anxiety levels were through the roof. It was horrendous. So at 47 years old, I started playing squash again, and it almost saved my life. And certainly to have a healthy interest outside of your business, I can't stress strongly enough to get you through the good and the bad times.
Excellent, brilliant. Okay. How have you, well, you kind of alluded to it there, but how have you actually kept yourself motivated then through this?
By looking at new projects. I'm looking at a fantastic opportunity to build a squash training centre out in Mallorca with Rafa Nadal's academy. It's something that I've dreamt of for a long time, but never really had the time to do. So I've just used the time to go on another direction. And
how did your team? How was your team responded? How have they helped you?
They've been brilliant. They found it very, very difficult because we have had to furlough staff, even though, so not to cut too far to the bare minimum, but we've engaged with people. We've only furloughed people part-time. So we've had them in the office at least. Nobody's not worked at all, at least one day a week. They've come into the office, engaged with the staff, helped us with the clients, done some training, try and keep them involved.
Fantastic. What in terms of have you been able to do other things? I mean, have you just focused on this? Have you been able to get into some other things as part of the projects you talked about?
Well, we have. Yeah, we do a lot with schools and universities, and we're doing another project with a former, who currently is the head of PE, one of our large schools here, about using the facilities that are underutilized at schools. You look at South Hunsley School, for instance, they've got fantastic sports facilities. For 80% of the time outside of school time, they're unused, absolutely unused. I've got some photographs on a Wednesday afternoon at 5 o'clock at Hunsley. There is nobody. Now, to me, that is a complete waste, and something has to be done about it. So that's another project that I'm looking into.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions coming through? Yeah.
Hi, Ian.
Yeah.
I've got a question about the travel industry and when things come back, hopefully after COVID. What can you do in your company and others like yours to stop people using you as sort of a shop window and then going home and booking them holidays themselves? Would you advise against that, and why?
I think we have to, as an industry, we have to stand up and charge for our services. Now, this can be done in two ways. In the corporate world, it's quite simple because you can charge a management fee, so you're classed along the same lines as a lawyer or a solicitor. You charge the fee for your services, and then you manage that travel. On a retail world, it's very difficult because people just see it as an additional cost. So certainly for ourselves, for major projects, we'll be charging an amount of money that if the deal is placed with us, that is then taken off the cost of the holiday. So there's no, but we have to do it. We just can't carry on like this. And it's the traveling public have had it too good for too long by having the cheapest airfares in the world, and people like myself and my wife and all the other great people we have to be drained of information.
Okay, and that's a great story. And if you had one lesson, you probably covered it, but one thing to advise to people listening in here with their businesses right now, what would that be?
It would be just to understand that opportunity still exists. The world may have closed down, but don't let your imagination shut down. Just keep thinking. They can't take that away from you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Martin, can we move on? Thanks
Yeah,
again.
thank you, Ian. And we've certainly, I think you're very, very positive. When after we've had some of our games of squash, you've had some interesting conversations about business, haven't we?
We have.
Thank you. Okay, so next up, we've got David Hull from Beverley Park Homes, who's a manufacturer of luxury lodges. And during the course of 2020, David's even found time to launch a new business. So
thank you, Martin. Good morning, everybody. My main business is called Beverley Park Homes, as Martin mentioned. We produce high-end luxury log cabins. A lot of the ones that you'll see going down the motorway as half a lodge, they're the ones that we produce. Beverley Park Homes has been trading for 3.5 years now, and is settling down as a business, and has allowed me to all look elsewhere for the projects. I set up a kitchen company a couple of years ago, and I've got a real passion for fitted furniture, bedroom furniture, kitchens, and I wanted to get back into it, but didn't really have the time, if I'm honest. I set up the business, but Beverley Park Homes was taking up so much of my time growing that business that it was just a second thought. And around maybe 9 months ago, and I was approached by an old apprentice of mine from years ago, and this lad has got it, seriously got it. He's 23 years old, and he's one of the most confident people you could meet, and to invest in somebody like that was a good opportunity. He wanted to branch out into the manufacture of kitchens and bedrooms, but was a little bit wet behind the ears, and also needed a bit of a bigger order book and one thing's and another. So I decided to give him the majority share of a company called Oaks of Beverley. And we set, if anybody knows a company called Dreamer Kitchens and Bedrooms in Beverley, that's where I served my time as an apprentice. And that's what we tried to replicate as a business. We put some money into a pot and opened the factory on the 1st of March, which obviously with COVID wasn't the best of times, but it is what it is. And we produced, or together, we put a factory together which has got great capabilities for really top-end furniture. And this was all within, I'd say, within the last 6 to 9 months. And we are now firing on all cylinders from there. And it has now 6 full-term members of staff, healthy order book up to Christmas, really, really positive. I mean, in the times that we've got, it's done amazingly well. And that's just an example of, not me taking the leading role in a business, but identifying that I didn't have the drive and the time to take it to the level that I wanted to be. And an understanding that a smaller percentage of a business with somebody like Joe who's running it and driving it and really pushing it as a business would be a lot more beneficial than 100% of nothing. And then off the back of the Park Homes side of things, we wanted to target a lower end of the market. Where we sit is quite high, and we know that there was a gaping hole in the market for a home of a certain size. So before COVID, Brexit started to snowball this. We were all talking about people not going away as much well before COVID came. So it was a case of, how are we going to gear up for this Brexit? What's Brexit going to look like? Do we need more ranges? Yes. Do we want to produce them in the same place? No. So I created 2 completely separate brands. We've got Beverley Park Homes and Minster Leisure Homes, 2 companies that completely stand on their own 2 feet, that are staffed from top to bottom. And Minster is solely designed to focus on the lower end of the market. Excuse me. And I went out knowing that in the middle of COVID, with all the parks shut, it was, like Ian said, it was gearing up for the end of it. It was saying, we know this is going to finish. What are the successful companies going to look like when they come out the other side of this? The successful companies are going to have the product ready, they're going to have the factory ready, they're going to have production lines ready to produce over the next couple of years to fill these gaps. So it was an awareness that there was a good point coming for our industry, and how are we going to get in the right place? So the stars seemed to align. We found a factory that I'd kept an eye on, all Beverley based, all my factories are Beverley based. And it was a little bit big for me, and then somebody took the back end. And at the same time, we were having discussions with Parks on bigger orders. So we found the factory. I managed to make some calls, put a good team of workers together, and then I went out to sell a product. And I knew and seeing the owners here and there, and I managed to clock up about £500,000 worth of sales in a couple of weeks.
Great story.
So it was.
I just need to move you on a bit in terms of moving to questions. Is that all right?
No problem, David. No problem.
You could have gone forever. It's a great story, as Ian's was as well. This young man, I mean, that's about finding an entrepreneur within, really, isn't it? Finding somebody who's got that kind of passion and energy to enable you to.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, from the first day I met Joe, sometime even at 16, I took him out of school at 16, and I knew from the day I met him, they just had something about him in spades. And we've kept in touch since. And to be able to see him go from an apprentice on a moped to a director of a company with staff working for him, it's just unbelievable to see. At 23 years old as well.
Good. I mean, some people might say giving shares away is not a smart thing to do. I mean, how do you actually protect yourself with that?
Well, again, I go back to the belief that financially, it wasn't a very good idea. I know that. But I know I could have set up a different class of shares for Joe, and I could have made it look like this, and I could have made it look like that. But he's an intelligent chap. And at the end of the day, to really drive the business, it had to be his, like Beverley Parkham and Minster's mine. You know, he had to have the drive and the focus and the passion to really take it to the next level. And I'd rather have 30% of a massive business than 10% of something that's just an empty website with an empty bank account.
Yeah. You talked a bit about your vision about, looking at Brexit, I'm going to say, post-COVID when it's finished. What, do you think that's important to have a picture of the future, creating the future you want based on, a best guess of what might happen?
Yeah, I think we need to be in the arena for it. If we want to be able to sell homes, I need a lot of square footage with full production lines now. And I can't think now that's what I need. I needed to think this 3 months ago. We opened the factory on the 1st of September, painted the floor, and now we have 1, 2, 3 homes already dispatched in a full production line. We're in the arena to take the orders. We're there with Andy Crosley, was down yesterday taking some pictures and doing some bits. And we need to be in the arena to go out and get them orders.
Yeah. So you talked about how you kept yourself sane by playing squash. How do you do that? How do you keep yourself, safe and sane?
I think a mixture of both. We shut the factory in COVID with no real, not support, I won't say support, but no real direction from the government. And I didn't feel like I had anyone saying, right, Dave, today you need to shut and today you need to open. When I shut the factory for 10 weeks, sent the lads home, all on full pay, looked after them, and they all came back 10 weeks later and we started working again. Within that 10 weeks, I got my scruffs back on, gutted the factory, made it look like British Aerospace when the lads came back in. It felt like an efficient, clean environment to come back into, and that's how I spent my time, really, just tidying up the factory and keeping on top of it, and obviously dealing with Sybil's, bounce back, councils, the merry-go-round that we've all been on. And that's it, really.
If you had one piece of advice to give to the audience today from all that great experience you've had, what would it be?
Well, to really get cracking on and to make things happen, 2 things, really. You're not going to set up a business in a day, just make lists. Just a little list every day. It's amazing what can be achieved within a few months' time. Just tick them off little bits at a time, set up the website, set up the bank account, register the business. Before you know it, you're in a really good place. And don't listen to the BBC. If you want to hide underneath your desk, scared of your own shadow, then put the news on. If you want to crack on and create some businesses, turn the news off and start writing some lists.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a very quick point, a very interesting point. I did a job on Australia once with a guy who set up Sydney Harbour Bridge, and he thought he could do it in 2 years. It took him 12, and he defeated 257 bylaws. I said, how the hell did you do that? How did you? He said, every time a problem came up, I just made a list of it. I just saw it as a list of problems I had to knock off. There's another one, there's another one. And as I knocked them off, I got more confidence. And I think, in a sense, that's what you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Definitely.
Great story. Thank you very much. Martin, over to you.
Okay, thank you, David. Our next speaker is Sally Ray. So Sally and Ray's firm favourites of FEO.
Absolutely, very good.
And Sally acquired a local tool company. Was it around 4 or 5 years ago, Sally, I believe, and rebranded it, moved premises, and maintains the firmest grip of her diary of anyone I know. So I'll pass on to you, Sally Ann.
Right, hi everybody. Yes, I have a tool hire company, and when kind of COVID hit, I remember we was all sat at home watching the news, and then suddenly our WhatsApp group started going crazy, and I didn't really understand myself what it was that we needed to do. So we met the next day. We took the decision to stay open. This was because we've got some of our customers are essential workers that work on the railway lines and housing associations and things. So we decided that we needed to stay open for them. But we scaled everything right back. So we kept the manager and a fitter on full time. The others were asked to go home on furlough, and then the office staff were kind of moved home to work from there. Suddenly I had homeschooling to do, so the day sort of suddenly turned into being a really kind of buoyant, busy business, to then suddenly everything fell off a cliff. I was working at home in the morning homeschooling, which is miles more difficult than anything else I've ever done. Feeding them, watering them, going into work after lunch, to bring in food in for everybody because they've not necessarily had chance to get out. And then sort of just getting stuck in on the counter and just trying to keep, the phones covered and that type of thing. But initially it was really quiet. And so we took that time to paint the floor and sort of reorganize the warehouse. And then gradually things began to sort of begin to build again. With the finance team, we looked at all of our suppliers to see which ones we could perhaps, and negotiated with them if we could delay payments slightly. We took payment holidays where we could. We made like squirrels basically and just tried to cling on to everything we could, and also stopped any non-essential purchases or services we were getting. And also our customers surprisingly paid very promptly, more than I've ever known. I think there was certainly a feeling that we're all in it together and we need to do what we can to help each other. And then also the Sybils and the bounce back and all the rest of it, there was all that to deal with. So it was just a really kind of difficult time, but we just all got our heads down and played our part. And we gradually began to get busier again. And then luckily for us, the weather in April was fantastic, which meant that everyone that was meant to be on an Easter holiday would decided to put pizza ovens in or do a patio or whatever. So we've got loads of cash customers that we don't normally have. So again, that was cash coming in through the door, nowhere near what we'd normally do, but it just meant that I just felt so lucky and so grateful that we had managed to be fortunate in that situation. And, and that was kind of by chance, really. It wasn't any master plan that I'd had. It was just, I was just in a lucky situation. And so we gradually began to get busier again as people were going back to work. And we gradually got people back in from furlough. And by kind of end of May, June time, we were back as a full team again. And we were really busy and have been really busy ever since, because I think all the builders and all the tradesmen that had jobs booked in have all been catching up. And so we've been months in the shape that we've got through in.
Okay, Sally, tell us about Grimsby.
Well, Grimsby was an opportunity that just fell into my lap, really. I had a phone call out of the blue to say that a company was being sold, a tool hire company was being sold in Grimsby, and that was at the end of September. And then we kind of had to move quickly and negotiated, and now we've got a go hire Grimsby from the 1st of October. So it was just such a quick turnaround. But there's lots of activity in Grimsby. It just looked like such a good opportunity. It was an established business, and so October has been. I've been a bit at sea with everything. with sort of sorting out what we need to sort out there. And also we had a record month in September. It was the most we've ever turned over here in Hull. So everything's just been crazy. I've not really had to stop for a breath yet, I don't think.
Oh, okay, all right. In terms of how do you stay sane? In terms of all this, it sounds like it's as Martin said, diary management must be an art form. How do you cope?
I think just given every aspect of my life with the 3 girls and the 2 businesses now and various other things that I have ongoing, things just fall off the edge and plates start dropping, and I also start feeling like I'm out of control. And when I get that feeling, I'm not very effective in my day-to-day work. So I just tend to have at the beginning of the week or on a Sunday night, I have 6 boxes in my diary, and one's about the kids, one's about each business, one's about just family and friends and things that I need to do there, and one's about myself actually, because like Ian said, if I'm not being able to exercise or do my own thing, I really start to kind of feel the stress and the pressure. So I try and also diary in for myself as an appointment with myself, if you know what I mean. So I try and prioritise that as well.
What do you do? I mean, do you say exercise? Are you a swimmer?
Well,
how do you actually do? What do you do?
Through COVID, I was doing Joe Wicks. Well, trying to get my girls to do Joe Wicks with me in the morning, but then I just ended up on my own dancing around the living room doing the silly billies, as he calls them. But I also do yoga, and I still do Joe Wicks a bit now on YouTube, just because I quite like it. And then also I like to go running and definitely dog walking. You know, just getting outside really as well.
Have you managed to find any talent within? I mean, there's you, and you talked about. Have you been able to sort of develop a team, find people, good people?
Yeah, I think that's one thing that the team have all played their part, whether that be at home or whether that be working from home or here, sort of carrying the load. Everyone's played the part. I think certainly through it all, I think our business development manager Emily, who joined us a year ago, really gets what I'm trying to do with the growth, because I'm also about to complete on a property on Chamberlain Road to open a second depot in Hull. So what the challenges we face now is how we're going to integrate our kind of small network of hire shops and how we're going to make sure that they're working together. So Emily really kind of understands what I'm trying to do there. So that it's great to have someone kind of, working with us towards that. But that said, the whole team have been brilliant with pushing forward.
Open another one in Hull. What drives you then, Sally? Where does this all come from?
Do you know, I don't know. I can't explain it. I feel like I've just got someone pressing on my back saying, come on. I want to create something bigger than I ever could imagine. And I don't really know why. It's just a kind of ambition that I've got, and I can't say it's because there's anything particularly that I want, or there's not kind of like a kind of thing that I'm after. It's just I just want to look at something and think, wow, we did that, look what we did, and it just, I don't know, I really need to put my finger on what it is. I don't know. Okay,
what I mean, if you had one piece of advice for people listening, watching in, what would that be?
There's something that I do in January every year, and it's a risk register. So I get to work after the Christmas break and I sit down and I go through everything that could go wrong, and literally like kind of fire, flood, if a key member goes off on sick, if a member of staff has an accident, if a customer has an accident, if I die, it's like a really morbid list. And then I have a grid next to it with the probability of that happening and the possibility of that happening. And I score those out of 10, and then I add it up at the end. And then I spend the month of January kind of trying to mitigate against the biggest risks that present themselves to me. And I never had global pandemic on that list ever.
Why not?
I don't know. It's foolish of me not to have put it on. But I think given the fact that I've had this kind of risk register, so I have a kind of reference to return to, kind of what did I kind of felt like I was capable of or equipped and able to sort of plan albeit, you know, the lack of kind of government direction at the time was it was vague, but I still I think it just gave me confidence. And so I would say to people it's a really useful exercise to do at the beginning of the year.
Well, you're in good company, because that's exactly what NASA did when they did the space launch. It's called potential problem analysis. Exactly that. Have you read the book?
No.
They just do it naturally. Okay. It's a great. Well, I'll tell you later. It's called New Rational Skills, but they developed a process exactly like that to manage the space program. Exactly the same as that. So you're in good company there. What a great story. Thank you very much indeed, Sally. Over to you, Martin.
Okay, thank you, David. And I'm relieved to see Lloyd Atkin, his internet connection has stabilised. So welcome, Lloyd. So Lloyd has helped steer and develop a sustainable cleaning company, BioD, over 20 years now, taking full control in a management buyout a few years ago. And many of Lloyd's products have been in high demand over the last few months. So be interesting to hear Lloyd's story.
Hello, and apologies for being late. Yeah, obviously it's been challenging time because cleaning products have been in demand. One of the big issues we've had is our supply chain collapsing around us. Some of it we didn't even know where the products came from, but a really quite boring fact is that about 80% of the world's supply of trigger sprays comes from northern Italy, and obviously they were locked down before most people were, so that caused a real issue. So, you know, one of the things it's helped us do is look at our supply chain and make it more robust. You know, we've now moved that supply to a UK supplier, which has the additional benefit that with the uncertainty around Brexit, we know that that we will have continued supply and stability on pricing. One of the big things we've operated throughout is fear in the factory. We operate a factory, and many of the people were genuinely afraid. So I think having a robust plan and investing pretty heavily in the first instance on rotating brakes and having one-way systems and hand sanitizers and all of those types of things really did work for us. I mean, I don't think everyone can do it, but we were in the fortunate position we could pay people a 20% bonus. So if they came in for the full week, especially in the early days, I think we did that for 3 months just to incentivize people. You know, I think there was a lot of unknown, a lot of fear, and they came in and appreciated getting some kind of danger money because they didn't know what was happening. We'd had a couple of weeks of people just disappearing and, you know, self-isolating, etc., when there were very few cases in Hull. So we've continued doing that and making our kind of office space now with visual entry instead of fingerprints and heat sensors, so the door won't open if your temperature's over a certain point. So there are a lot of things we've done and a lot of things we continue to do. One of the big other things we had is when we returned to work, there was a lot of fear from some of the office staff, particularly those who were self-isolated, who were totally alone if they lived at home alone. They seemed to develop some kind of agoraphobia and didn't want to leave the house. And I think it was a genuine fear. So we had to kind of phase them back into work and prove all of the things we'd done to try and keep people safe at work. I think that's the thing, that letting people feel safe as the key thing as we've worked throughout. And kind of operationally, the big shift for us has been lots of the bricks and mortar stores we supplied to, independent retailers, etc., have been closed for some period. So we had to be pretty agile and move our sales to a more online format, so they were more suitable for postage and delivery, which we did very quickly, and that worked for us. So, you know, everyone thinks because we're in cleaning, it's been a great time for us, but it has had its challenges. We're currently having the products tested against COVID, so that's something we can add to the list, because, you know, we get a lot of inquiries saying, are the products effective against COVID? And it's not something you feel you can say yes, even though they are antimicrobial. So we're just waiting on tests for those. Obviously, labs are very busy at the moment, but in the next few weeks we should have those, and that will help us with.
Can I get your questions with you then, Lloyd?
Yeah, absolutely, David.
Nice to see you, Henry. Glad you could make it, mate. How do you keep yourself? How have you kept yourself sort of sane? How have you kept yourself kind of focused and?
Well, I've kept myself sane by carrying on going to the office when my wife and children. My wife's working from home with the children. I think having that structure of going out to the office, even though there was nobody else there, really worked for me. I think I've conditioned myself to working from home, but it's not something that comes naturally to me.
Your wife's not listening to this, I take it. I hope, is she not?
Well, she's in the house. I hope she's not. The door's closed to this room.
Okay. Well, in terms of your team, and have you found that people have stepped up and surprised you, or have you found some talent within you didn't know you had?
Yeah, certainly some have on the shop floor, and people who are positive and wanted to make a positive change to how the operation works to keep us safe, to make sure there's a natural division into bubbles and that staggering breaks. The guys who are the supervisors on the shop floor have really stepped up and kind of almost over-educated themselves on COVID, but we're probably a bit heavy-handed on our precautions. But can you be too heavy-handed on it? I think we're doing as much as we can, and probably a lot more to protect the people working for us, which is in my interest. I need to keep this business open.
Yeah. And how do you see the short-term future for your business, Martin? Lloyd, sorry.
Short term, I think it is very promising for us. We've smoothed out the issue. We had a massive issue with customers being unhappy with us. Our lead times went from under 2 weeks to over 12 weeks, almost overnight, which doesn't make customers very happy when they're planning catalogues and they've got warehouse stores, etc. So with those supply chain issues that cause those increased lead times are the things that we've smoothed out, and we've got dual source of virtually everything we supply now.
What action did you take to do that? Because that may be an issue other people face. Lloyd?
It is what we looked at we got all of our specs of particularly packaging, and we sent it to every UK packaging supplier we could find, also asking the question who had capacity, who had stability of their own supply chain, and there were surprisingly few, but we do now have alternatives for every bit of packaging. I mean, we use alcohol in some of our products as a solvent in laundry products, but you try getting alcohol at the moment, it will, it's all in hand gels. It will cost you 4 times as much as prioritized for that use. So we've had to reformulate products to fit with the raw materials available.
Sounds like it's been a tough time, Lloyd, for you. If you had one bit of advice for people listening in and running businesses in these difficult times, what would it be?
Well, I think try and be positive for your team, particularly, and surround yourself with those positive people, those positive influences. I think I've seen a lot of businesses with their heads down, and I know it's been very challenging. But I think as a leader, owner of a business, what your team wants to see is you being positive and seeing a way through it and giving them structured direction on how we might do that. I think the word unprecedented's bandied out a lot, but I think it has been unprecedented, and actually giving the teams the support they need to help them do the jobs. Or people get very much in a groove, don't they? So any support you can give them and positivity on helping them change the way they do things so that your business can still function.
Okay, thanks, Lloyd. Another great story and another good example there of leadership really stepping up when it's needed. Okay, Martin, it's over to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're the rock star of this group, I understand. Is that right?
Rock star, we'll see. I think we're all stars, aren't we? So the last story is our own as D3 Office Group, and we have an online retail business as well called alwayspersonal.co.uk. So we have 53 people spread across 2 sites, which is a lot of cost to absorb if sales were going to fall off a cliff, and that's certainly how it felt like things were going to turn out when the news was coming in thick and fast in March. And as soon as lockdown was properly announced, all of our furniture manufacturers closed overnight, literally 1 day notice. The biggest workwear supplier we've had closed. and I just managed to squeeze in the last furniture delivery that we could get into a client was for Martin Lauer's N3i venture at the Bridgehead, and we finished off 90% of it, and the 10% we went back 3 months later to finish off. Now, thankfully, most customers were understanding with that, and I think because they tipped most people out of their offices, they didn't really need the furniture to be installed, etc. So, however, we were able to get good stock and supplies of office supplies, and we were encouraged by our customers to step up and look after their needs, because many of them were in either the health sector or food industry, manufacturing, and I think we've been lucky in many ways that probably the heartland of our customer base is in sort of industry and manufacturing and distribution, rather than heavily into sort of big office blocks, where even as even last week I was talking to somebody who has a 3-story head office block in Scunthorpe with normally 300 staff, and they've got 14 people in there, and he doesn't anticipate having many more back until sort of early next year. So we furloughed 27 people straight away, with the criteria being that we wanted to keep a tight team that knew our customers, they knew our systems. We retained, interestingly, unlike some of our competition, we retained some of the more costly people, the order makers rather than the order takers. And that proved crucial to us in the few months afterwards. We analysed our entire customer base by sector to review the risk profile. So people that were particularly in the sort of leisure industry, we've got some hotels and sort of that type of thing. We chased payment early and made sure we were on top of that. But many people were telling us we'd extend quite a large credit line to people who they just ignored our messages and said that the finance team had been furloughed. So we knew we would be waiting for payment for a while. We've lost a little bit of money along the way with sort of bad debt. So national holidays took us for probably £11,000, and we had a polyframe windows, which I think it was more of an excuse really. They could probably have kept going, I would have thought, if it was a good business, but that was £7,000. However, having said all that, one of the things we did do is we completely over communicated with customers, and we understood what they wanted, and what they wanted was PPE and cleaning materials. And whilst we saw some huge dips in our sales in certain product areas, say 35% down this year, January to September, in furniture, print business down 40%, office supplies down 20%, the workwear was down 35%. Last year we sold £4,000 between March and September in PPE products, and this year 1.8 million we've sold from sort of March until September. And so I think we consider ourselves extremely lucky that we tapped into a product area that we didn't supply before, and actually we felt privileged in a couple of the months, March and April particularly, to be supplying into some hospitals and care homes who couldn't get product from their usual sources of supply. So whilst some of the prices were incredibly inflated at cost to us, and we weren't making big margins on it, we did do very well out of it.
Martin, another great story. In terms of your people and that, how do you keep people on side, the people that stayed? The 50, you had 53, you furloughed 27, so obviously the people who you kept, how do you keep them motivated and positive?
We've invested heavily in IT over the last few years, which has been a really lucky move as well. So we've kept in touch with everybody by setting up a tight team on Microsoft Teams, and we've had weekly meetings for just 1 hour every week to get everybody together, discuss where we're at. We cut out all the people that were on furlough out of the loop on that, because we didn't want them to sort of be getting annoyed about messages as to what was going on, but we did keep them informed as to what was happening afterwards as well. So certainly the Microsoft Teams was brilliant for a 1 hour meetup every week. We discussed, certainly on the PPE side of things, what we could get, which we turned into traders really, and we still are to a certain degree, where we were particularly a solution sell to customers. We turned into traders.
And how do you keep yourself straight?
Well, I won a few games of squash with Ian when the squash club reopened. Although I managed to pull my calf muscle in the last game, Ian, haven't I? So
You have.
yeah, that's in repair at the minute. But yeah, that walking the dog, out for bike rides, and but I can't say I've had many days off. It's been pretty stressful, sort of getting in and making sure you're on top of your game every week, and watching what's happening with cash. Some of the things we've been buying, we're very used to just-in-time stock management. We've had to invest a lot of money in stock. Some of that stock we've been very successful with. Some of it we've lost money on because we bought at the peak and the cost prices have dropped. So a lot of things to think about. A lot going on.
Well, if you had one piece of advice for the people listening in, what would you say, Martin?
I think what one of the things we've learned is we've got a great team of people, but I think one of the lessons we learned actually throughout this process is we've found out and discovered who the brilliant people are, and we should have probably made some decisions about some other people and the structure of our business earlier than we did. And it's been a great opportunity to take those actions now and restructure the business around the people that we don't want on the team as much as the brilliant people that have been rewarded well for their efforts.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, well, I think it's down to me for 2 minutes just to try and pull it together. First of all, I want to say thanks to there's some fantastic stories, positive stories. You know, you imagine in COVID, people might be coming along. I was a bit afraid, saying, "Oh, ain't it awful?" There's been none of that, and that's been fantastic. I think what we've seen, I think what we'd like is that from this, that people, when you go to these events, you usually have a speaker and you go away and you remember the one good story, but nothing happens. We're hoping that from this, people have maybe picked up some ideas or some actions they might be able to take to their businesses from these people, so people can take some takeaways from it, which is a bit different. Some great stories. Things that struck me from it was leadership, great leadership in every case. Positive mental attitude of the people, you know, having a positive mindset, being able to develop people, find people within who can help, and communicating with people and keeping the team on side. Some great stories about that, and I really enjoyed it. I hope that the people who listened in and joined us on it got the benefits from it. I really enjoyed that. I hope that other people did as well. Over to you, Martin.
Okay, thank you, David. And I'd just like to say thank you to all of the panelists for hearing your stories. Thank you to Jan and Kerry for setting up this session. And thank you to all of the people that have joined in, all the participants. And hopefully this is the first of a few FEO growth sessions that we're organising. And I think it's been very good. So thank you very much for everybody's time. Thank you.
Cheers, Martin. Thank you.